All right, hello. Okay. I'm just waiting for the chat to fill up a little bit first, if it does at all. I wonder if that's kind of hard to see with my webcam there. Maybe I'll push that over a little. Alright, let me know if the music's too loud or if there's any audio issues or any problems with seeing what's going on. I'm just going to be working on the game. I'm going to be doing a bit of coding, maybe a little bit of animation again today. So to recap for anyone who's not seen it before, this is a little tactical sports blood sport game, and it's turn-based and grid-based. The objective is to get the ball that you're carrying to the other side of the field and make a touchdown, and that's how you win a round. And these orange guys are going to be basically like orcs or monsters of some kind. I'm still figuring out exactly what, but the general sort of fiction setting behind it is that like you're a slave in a kind of gladiator dungeon sort of setting, and the orcs have just got like hundreds of slaves and they treat them like crap, and they sort of they pit them against they pit them against like the orcs in this kind of like fight to the death, which the slaves have basically no chance of winning, but if they do win, then they get their freedom back. So it's kind of a against the odds sort of situation where the penalty for losing is death. So the basic gist is the gameplay is that you move around on a grid. You have to carry the ball to the other side to score, but you can only do so using these available options here, and these are randomized. So when I move forward, enemies will take their turn, and then okay, I happen to randomly get the same thing twice there, but let's move again. Okay, so now that I use forward, the one here has been replaced with weight. Chicken and egg versus chicken farmer. Man, that's actually a pretty good idea. The egg is a placeholder. I'm going to use them as like my placeholder for like every project I start, I think. So I'm trying not to get too attached to the egg, but it's pretty cute. So yeah, as I was saying, like once you use one of these items here, it's going to get swapped out with another random one. So you have like a limited set of actions available to you at any time, and there's a bit of strategy involved in kind of maybe saving one for the next turn if you know that like so okay, I'll give you an example. Like this enemy here, he's going to step forward. I can see from this, like this is just a kind of placeholder peg that shows he's going to move in this direction. He's going to end up on this tile. So what I can do is I can use wait on this turn, wait for him to move forward, so now he's on that tile, and then I can move forward on this turn, and that will deal damage to him. Right now it's one hit kill, but I may introduce some kind of health, something like that. So now, like conversely, if I move into this tile using down, he's going to attack on his next turn, and he's going to kill me, and I'll lose. Again, like maybe the player will be able to take multiple hits. So since my last stream, I've got quite a bit added. There's a few new animations when you wait and when you attack. There's some little animations. there's the camera that sort of tracks the enemies as they move around. It helps to sort of put the focus on, you know, who to look at next. I've also overhauled how the grid works so that previously the grid just kind of had a reference to the character that was standing on it, but now I can plug in a bunch more data. Like I can say, like, is this tile a desired tile? So for example, if this enemy decides he's going to move there, when this enemy makes his decision, he's not going to try to move there as well, because that's just going to end in them colliding with each other and damaging each other. As I said on the last stream, like, I do want them to be able to damage each other, but not. It shouldn't be something that they intend to do. It's just something that the player can kind of trick them into doing. So what else is new? Yeah, I kind of made the AI a bit smarter, so that what I just mentioned there, and then they also won't try and kind of move off the field. Like, if they're standing here, they won't try and move to here and then just do nothing. And then I've added these intentions. And then of course the last thing is the ball, which is new. So the ball is the object that you need to carry to the other side of the field, but it's also something you can throw. So this is kind of like your ranged offensive ability. So if I throw that now, boom, that's going to take out an enemy. I may change that to be like a stun or a knockback, because it feels like they're pretty weak when they should feel like really strong, like super monsters. But now the problem is that I don't have the ball anymore, so I'm going to need to go and pick it up before I can actually score. And because of the random turns, I might not just be a straight path to get there. So I guess a little kind of design dilemma I'm having right now is, like, do I want to stick with those random turns? Because this game, as I mentioned before, was based on an old prototype I made called Confused Rogue, and that was really simple. I'm just going to pull up the page for it now. 1 second. So it was one-dimensional. You only move from left to right, and I guess a lot of the tactics and the strategy came from just kind of your alignment. You could move forward like a couple of tiles at a time, and you could move back a couple of tiles at a time, and so it was sort of a case of like juggling your position on that linear path. Whereas now you've got like full 2D motion, so you can go in and out and you can weave around, and I think that works really well for the sort of sports setting of the game. Like, I wanted it to feel like that sort of like mad dash in American football, where, like, you know, the opposite teams are like piling in on you from every angle, and you're like ducking and weaving through them to make a touchdown. But I feel like the more I play it, I feel like it's kind of ending up in situations where you can, like, you don't really make many strategic choices, you just react on the spot. I think some of that comes from the fact that the enemies aren't particularly aggressive. You know, like in this prototype, like, the enemies are always going to end up colliding with you. If you let them, you know, if you just keep moving forward, they're just going to move into you, and eventually you're going to die. Whereas in this, you know, like, they might kind of take a different path now, because they're kind of stupid. Like, I haven't really programmed the AI to have much of a plan. You know, it just sort of reacts on the turn it's on. It just tries to, like, not bump into anything on the next step. But there's definitely like it's lost some of the threat and the tension. So in chat, Martin is saying you could mix it up by having enemies that move multiple tiles instead of one per turn, or add movement patterns. Yeah, that's a good idea. Movement patterns for sure. Like, I think I want to get like different types of enemies that do different things, or I guess like different to continue with the sports theme, like playing different positions, you know, like you'd have a defense and an offense. But yeah, multiple tiles I think would be pretty interesting. Like especially you could have sort of like charge attack ones. So like let's say this guy over here, okay, let's say this guy here, he's going to do a charge attack and just like take out this entire column. So I know I need to like I need to either brace for an attack or I need to move out the way, like by moving up. Another thing I guess is like giving the player the ability to move more than one tile as well might be useful. Although not so much. It's more that the enemies aren't enough of a threat, I guess. One that can attack 2 tiles at once with some sort of melee swing. Yeah. I guess so. I mean, it's kind of just like just amping up the damage or like the effect of what they do. That would work. So another thing I'm kind of like struggling with is the fact that at some point you're probably going to end up in a situation where you can't actually you can't avoid taking damage because you've just been dealt a bad hand. Like I've ended up in situations playing it where I've sort of I've had like a wait command and I've left that because I don't need it, and then I've had another one and I've left that because I don't need it, and then another one, and then it's like, well, I've just got 3 waits here and I have to just use them. So like I can see some ways around that. I could add a button which like kind of nukes your hand and just give you 3 fresh random cards or actions rather. That's one way of dealing with it. Another way is that I could, and I was sort of thinking about this a lot last night and this morning, was basically removing the randomized system entirely and going with more of a straight up kind of tactical system where you just got like a set of commands and like you just always have those commands available, and you know it just works like any other tactics game. A bail button you could use once per round. Would that be like kind of like do nothing, or like you mean like bin the cards that you've got? Escape? Oh, like quit out of the like what's the word, like yeah, like kind of surrender, like a full surrender. Yeah, that could work. So I guess then I should talk about like the meta game I'm thinking right now. Like it's still up in the air, but that leads on to that, where so I'd originally envisioned it as roguelike, which is why it's kind of like codename Rogue Ball. Well, actually it's Rush Ball in the project folder, but Rogue Ball everywhere else. So like it would basically be permadeath, and if you were to kind of surrender, then that would be it. That would be game over. But like since then I've been thinking like maybe that's not right for this. Maybe there should be some kind of metagame outside of that, and it's more like you're like a kind of manager, and you're sending players out, and you know if they if they get waxed, they get waxed. But maybe like you know some of them could take some damage and then they're out for a few games, and you can use some different characters instead. Like I think that would be a nice layer to it, and I think that would kind of help to extend the game a lot more. So I'm leaning towards that. So that would mean that your suggestion of a bail button would definitely work. Like maybe maybe your players get a penalty for forcing you to bail. Like they take the punishment so like you can't use them for a few games or something like that. Yeah, that works. I mean, ideally, like I think it would be nice to tweak the randomization system so that it doesn't actually put you in that kind of scenario, so that it recognizes, oh, you've got two of the same item and it's about to give you a third one. Just like don't do that, basically. It's never like that would be quite easy to do actually. That's probably like a good first step, and then I could like think about a bail. But bail would work anyway, like pretty easily because I could add that easily because I want to add like a bunch of fail conditions anyway. But yeah, so the other kind of like design dilemma I'm having now, and like this all hit me like as I was going to bed last night. So kind of thinking about it a lot. I'm wondering about whether there should actually be 2 player characters or maybe more, but like at the minimum, at least that like adding 1. That way, what I'm thinking is like the enemies can become a lot more brutal and aggressive, and it gives you kind of a get out clause where like you can pass the ball to your other player. So like if I've got another guy here and this enemy's like about to say do like a huge attack to this one, then and if I know it's going to wipe him out and he's got no way of avoiding it, like this character can pass the ball to this character and he's maybe got a chance of taking it down here and winning, even though this guy's been wiped. So I think that would add a lot of strategy to it. I think it would increase the potential for interesting tactics, interesting scenarios and outcomes and all that kind of stuff. So I'll probably add that for sure, but I guess it raises a lot of questions, like how do you, if you have 2 characters, how do you like make them act? Like how do you what order do they go in? Do you choose the order? Do they all go in the same turn and then the enemies will go in the same turn, or do they do like 1 player character, then 1 enemy, then the other player character, then another enemy? Or do they do like I don't know, do they share the moves? Do they have their own set of moves? There's a lot of questions that come out of that, but I think it's worth investigating. I think it could lead to some interesting stuff. So hello to everyone who's joined. This is a game I'm calling Rogue Ball, just as a working title. It's a tactical blood sport, kind of roguelike, kind of puzzle, sort of simple and casual. And this is like day 4 of development, I think. My goal is to have something released and playable within the first week, and I think it's pretty close. Yeah, it's feeling good. I'm happy with like how it looks. Well, I mean, it's pretty simple, but like it feels quite satisfying to watch things run around and fight each other. So the ball I added this morning, and it still needs some work. If I throw it, it can take stuff out, but then it just kind of sits there and the turn doesn't end. So one thing I need to code in is the is some kind of queue system, like action queue system, because having this ball for the first time, like introduced this concept of like I do an action, then the ball moves, the ball does an action, like that hits the enemy does an action, or he dies, and then it needs to come back to the player again. So I'm probably going to do a little bit of programming on this stream, and just get in like a system where I can like basically have a queue of actions in it, and the manager will just sort of run through those. So I'll probably get started on that right now. I'm going to make a C# script, and I'm going to call it action queue. Now queues are something I'm pretty new to. I used them for switch and shoot a few weeks ago, where I added an object pooling system, which would like essentially used it for like spawning bullets and spawning enemies, and like they're all just like objects in a queue which are deactivated, and then it just spawns one from the top of the queue. When it's destroyed, it pushes it back into the bottom of the queue. And that worked pretty well, so I'm going to reuse that. But my memory is terrible, and I have to Google like everything that I program. So like I'm sorry about that, but it's going to be quite it could be quite tedious. So we're going to go Q. Actually, what I want is a dictionary. I'll tell you what, I'm just going to open up my my code for switch and shoot, because I'm just going to copy and paste a bunch of that, because like, why not? So let's see, gameplay pooling. Which one was it? Object pooler. Yeah, this was it. I need to try and find a nice window configuration so that I can see the dashboard as well as everything else. As well as like close that. Can minimize OBS. That's killing my frame rate. Okay. So we're going to have a dictionary of objects, which is going to take a queue. Sorry, it's going to take. Let me think. I need to make a new class of game action first. Right. Okay. Which is going to be game action. All right. This is going to be like a generic class which defines like one action in the game. So like it's going to say who's doing the action and what the action is. So in here I'm going to have a public GPI and let's call it instigator or actor. Actor makes more sense. And then it's also going to hold an action, which is going to be a public in action, yeah. And then here we're going to have like all of the things we can do. Let's just put in one for now. Okay. Do we have any programmers in the chat? Because you guys are gonna you're gonna love this. You're gonna see how bad I am. How like I have to copy and paste and like double check every single thing and like keep checking my compiler. I've only been programming for about a year. Like I've been using Unity for I don't know, like 10 years now. But so I'm familiar with a lot of the concepts. But the actual like syntax is something that I'm still kind of internalizing, I guess. So a game action is going to be a class that contains an actor and an action. So in here it could be step forward step, side step up, side step down. This is literally going to be like every single action that can happen in the entire game. And my thinking is that, like, if I have this as one kind of unified thing, I can build up a list of what happens in the entire game, and then I can easily add like an action replay at the end, which I think would be a pretty cool feature. Like, you do all this kind of slow turn-based stuff, and then when the game's over, you can play it all back in real time. Well, kind of real time. That would be pretty awesome. So if I kind of consider like every action in the game as this sort of definable thing in a list, then it's going to be really easy to add that action replay feature. So what else can we do? We can throw forward, and I think that's it for now. So all types of characters can do those, and the player can do that. Right, so our dictionary now is going to contain a game action, and it's also going to contain a is it going to contain a queue? I don't think it is. It's just going to contain maybe it's the maybe this is actually where I want to be doing that. So I have the do you know what? I think that should actually just be a queue. Maybe a dictionary is the wrong thing. Any programmers watching want to weigh in on that? Like, should I have a dictionary of actions, or should I have a queue of actions? It's like my main kind of thing I'm using. Let's just check. Let's just check exactly what a queue has. So it's represents a first in, first out collection of objects. That's what we want in this case. But can it only hold one object? We want it to hold two objects, because unless, okay. No, okay. Okay, got it. So the queue, we have one queue with a list of game actions, and the game actions contains 2 bits of data, an actor and an action. Okay, perfect. So we don't need a dictionary at all. So now how do we set up a queue? I'm pretty rusty on this, and like I've only implemented it once, a queue and a dictionary, and I sort of like, you know, when you do something and you're kind of like, it works and I kind of understand it, but like I couldn't do it again without kind of going through a lot of the same steps of learning it again. That's where I'm at with this. Okay, we want a queue of game actions. And then what we can do, let's see, we can do public void add action to queue. So, oh man, that's so cold. I think I made that coffee like an hour ago. All right, so we're going to have this class which is basically sitting in the level on our level manager, which we have always present, always knowing everything. And this is just going to hold all the information about who wants to do what, and then we can kind of iterate through that whenever we need to. Because the problem I'm having with trying to like kind of get the flow of actions to work is that like if something happens and that causes something else to happen, I then have to like try and remember to go back to that previous thing, and I can see that just getting a tangled mess really quickly. So I'm going to build in this queue system. We add everything we want to do to the queue, and then we just go work our way through it at the pace we want to go. So we're going to go queue dot and queue game action. And then at some point we're going to want to go public void perform next action. Or I guess we want to game action, we can just get next action, and we can return queue dot remove some returns. Oh, we actually just want to dequeue. So that's gonna, whenever we want to like get the next action. Okay, let's see. We'll say perform next action, because when we call that, it's going to pull it out of there. So we can add things into the queue, and we can pull them out whenever we want to do them. Now, if I go into debug mode, I don't think we actually get to. We don't actually get to see what's in the queue, so I might just actually quickly add some debug logs just to say, so I can keep track of what's going on. We just want to log the queue size. Queue is such a weird spelling. Queue.count. And then maybe let's just add like what was added. Added game action dot action by game action dot actor. So whenever we add something to the queue, it's gonna print out the new length of the queue, what was added, what action was added, and who's going to do it. And then let's just do the same thing for when we actually pull something out. Queue size removed. Queue. Can you just do that? Can you grab something by the index? I guess we want to peek at the queue. And do queue.peek. What does that take? Oh, we don't need to pass in 0 because it only does the first object in the queue. Okay. So q.peek is just going to like give us information about the first object in the queue, but it doesn't actually like pull it out. It doesn't dequeue it. You just take a little sneaky peek. So now. What do we want to do next? We want to... Let's go to our player actions. Player actions is just a holder. The player is where we actually do stuff. So really we can put this right down into the base class. In my last stream I was talking about how my characters are all using an inheritance system. So we have the base class GPI, which is short for gameplay ingredient. And that's just like kind of a catch-all term for anything that can do something in the game. Like any object you might put in the level, which can be interacted with in some way, like even if it just sits there and is an obstacle, that's a GPI. And then like a character is a type of GPI, and the player is a type of character, and then also the enemies. An enemy is a type of character. So like in a hierarchy, let's go and quickly sketch this out in my old friend Paint. We've got at the top, we've got the GPI class, and then that character class inherits everything that GPI can do, and then player inherits everything that characters can do, and so does the enemy class. But the enemy class has behavior that's separate from the player class. So my concept of queuing up actions is something that player can do, but also the enemy, but also all characters, but also all GPIs. Because even if like, well, let me think. Maybe it doesn't make sense to have all GPIs do an action. Yeah, I guess we might as well. That way it's kind of easily extendable. My thinking is like I'm gonna have GPIs in the game which are like, say, like a treasure chest which just sits on a tile and takes damage, and maybe it doesn't make sense to consider. Actually, it does make sense. Yeah, okay. So our GPI should be doing actions because they can do stuff even if it's like instigated by another character. You know, just sitting there and waiting is an action, but also like getting hit is an action. So like my game action list here is going to actually be pretty huge by the end of it, because it's going to be like, we're going to also have like the hit. Whoa, yeah, this is going to be okay. I may need to rethink this at some point, like whether an enum makes sense for this, but because we're going to have to pass in damage and stuff. But yeah, this wouldn't support arguments. Unless maybe I just say like we can pass through like a value. That would work. So like then whenever we do damage, it can send a value through with it as well. So in that case, like hit, die, these can all be actions. but I can come back to that. First I need to just get the queue system working. So every GPI should have a protected void add action to queue, and we want to say what that action is. Oops. So that's going to find the action queue, which we want to be able to find at any point. So we're going to have a public static action queue instance, which we're going to declare. We're going to assign this as on awake. That just means that we could just call like this object. We can find it by just calling like action queue.instance, and it's going to be the only one in the scene. So it's just a really quick way of grabbing a reference to it. So whenever a GPI wants to do an action, we're going to go action queue.instance.add action to queue, and it wants. Okay, let's assign this a new game action object. Equals new game action, and the arguments are going to be, the actor is going to be this, and the action is going to be the action that we've passed in here. And then we're gonna send that to the queue. Wait, what have I done wrong there? Oh, we also want a value. I guess we can we do that? Can we default that to 0? Or is that not allowed? No, it needs something. Okay, I'm still kind of learning how to do constructors and kind of custom classes. Okay, so let's just pass in 0. That's like our kind of default. No. Oh. What am I doing wrong here? Doesn't. Cinemachine? You got some errors in Cinemachine? Oh, it's because the action. Okay, we don't need to worry about that just yet, but like we shouldn't have called that action. Let's say an object action is the enum we're going to use. Conflicts with. Okay, let's call it GPI action. I should probably just use namespaces here, but I've never done that, and I just want to kind of keep moving forward with this right now. So what am I doing wrong here? I'm trying to declare a new game action. Does not contain a constructor that takes 3 arguments. Okay, this is going to be something really obvious. Cast does not contain. I mean, I'm sure this is a pretty standard C# error. Hmm. Oh, I have to define the constructor. So I guess I should be using a struct instead of a class for the game action. Is that right? And that doesn't inherit mono behavior. And it should have a public game action GPI. Let's call them just G, A, and V. And the actor is going to be A. The action is going to be A, sorry. Wow, this is kind of messy. I'll tidy it up in a sec, but I just want to try it and get my head around it. And then the value is going to be V. And then in my game action to GPI action. Oh, okay. I'm passing in the wrong class. Okay. Visual Studio Code seems to have this error where if you create a new definition of something like this, it doesn't know what it is and it underlines it. So I'm just going to restart. That tends to fix it. There we go. Then it's not highlighting things which aren't actually problems. Okay. So our action queue is now made up of a struct, which just contains data. And that makes sense because we don't actually want to be, we don't want it to be doing anything. It doesn't need to inherit mono behavior, I think. And yeah. So when we add the action to the queue, okay, let's just try testing this. For every GPI, we're going to go add action to queue, and it's going to be GPI action dot. Let's just call it die because that's going to be something that's really obvious, and that should just debug it for every object that gets spawned in the game. We should see that in the log now. Okay, so queue size 1 added die by the ball, queue size 2 added die by the player, enemy, 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 enemy. Cool, so our queue's working. At least it's adding stuff to the queue. Oops. Yeah, we still can't see the queue there, which is kind of frustrating. I'd have to write a custom inspector if we wanted to actually like view what data is in that queue in the inspector. So that's like kind of frustrating. I found the same thing with 2D arrays, although obviously like a 2D array is really hard to represent using the basic Unity. Kind of, GUI stuff, especially if you went to like 3D arrays, you know, how would you show that? So what we now want to do is we want to every time we do an action, we want to add that to the queue. Although, you know what I've just realized is that if we add it to a queue, it's always going to get pushed to the back, which is not what we want at all. We probably want a list instead, because we want to be able to insert actions at the start. So like, let's say we have a big queue of characters moving around in one by one in order, and then one of them does an attack, and that attack has some knock-on effects. We want those knock-on effects to be kind of inserted at the top of the queue, not like after all the other movement has taken place. Like it needs to be immediate. It needs to happen right now. So we need the ability to control like where new actions get added. So that means that a queue is not the right kind of data holder for this system. So let's quickly change that. The action queue is now going to be a list. And that's not really a problem. Like we can just add, like, we can add stuff to a list just as easily as we can to a queue. Add game action and perform next action. Now we do want to not peek anymore, which is a shame because I like the idea of taking a sneaky peek at a queue. That terminology just makes me grin. Remove it. 0. Wait. Okay, so game action next action equals queue 0, and then we want to go queue.remove at 0. I mean, like, I know that changing lists using a remove at is not particularly performant, but given that this is a turn-based game, performance isn't really a concern. We're not going to be doing this like hundreds of times per frame or anything like that. It's just going to be like, you know, pretty steady pace. So a queue would have been better really for like a fast-paced game. That's why I used it in my pooling system in Switch and Shoot, was because like the whole point of a pooling system is to give better performance, to quickly like return objects. And now I don't really care about that, so like, who cares? So we're going to return the next action in the queue, and then we're going to remove it. But we also probably want to now be able to do is like add something to either the back of the queue or the front of the queue. Void add action to back of queue. Game action. That's basically the same, but add action to front of queue. We can go, I think we can do that right. We can go add. Can you do that? Is it insert? Oh yeah, there we go. So insert, we can say what index we want to put it at. So now we have the ability to add a game action to the front of the queue or to the back of the queue, which is what we want, so that we can kind of insert new actions at the right time in the sequence. But when we perform the next action, it's always going to do the first one in the queue. So that no longer exists, so we're going to go add action to back of queue. Add to front. So whenever we call this, we can say whether or not we're adding it to the front. Else to... Okay, so every GPI in the game, like every actor, has a has the ability to add an action to a queue, and then we can easily pass in like whether or not we want to add it to the front or not. Give that a quick compile because I don't trust myself. Whoa. Okay, there we go. So now, what I'm going to do next is set it so that whenever a character does an action, we call this and we add it to a queue. But first, I need a really quick bathroom break because I have a bladder the size of a pea. So bear with me. 2 minutes, please. Hi, I'm back. Okay, that's probably less than 2 minutes, but I did wash my hands. Okay. So I have a dog getting cozy on the bed right now. He's the laziest dog. I took him for a walk that was like, I don't know, 1.5 times the length of his usual walk, and he's just like out for the count. Yeah, he can't handle those slightly longer walks. Okay. So, hello to everyone who's new in the chat. Just working on my little tactical cute blood sport game. I'm calling it Rogue Ball because it's kind of roguelike, but a little bit. But yeah, it's a game where you need to take the ball to the other side and not get annihilated by orcs, basically. It's turn-based. It's got kind of what's the term? Like visible information, transparent information. You can see what the enemies are going to do in the next turn, like in Into the Breach, which is an awesome game. Highly recommend checking it out. And yeah, enemies telegraph their moves, so you can kind of plan your next move really carefully and have full information pretty much about what's going to go down next. So like for example here, I know not to move onto that tile because the enemy's going to move there. So I can wait first, enemies do their turn, he moves in and I'm still safe. But if I move into this square, he's going to hit me and I'm going to die. So right now I'm just kind of overhauling the queue system. Oh man, do you know what, this song is like my ultimate work song. It just gets me pumped so much. This is the Octopus project, and the song is called Kit, and I flipping love it. Okay, so whenever our GPIs want to do something, we need to add it to a queue. And I tell you what would be pretty handy actually is having 2 queues. And the reason for that is so that we can kind of see everything that happened. I'll come back to that later. Don't need to do it. So I guess like whenever we call, so instead of calling the action, we need to actually like just add it to the queue, and then the queue, there should be like a queue manager that calls the action. So let's find like, okay, let's not do hit because hit's quite a rare, well, semi-rare kind of case action. Let's do like something simple like movement. So step forward. Find references to step forward on the player. Oh, this shouldn't be here. I deleted you. Some of my my syncing software is giving me duplicate files, which is not good. I added a what's the safe one? This one. Player input. Okay, kill that. So we don't get confused. Okay, where were we? Find all references. Everywhere that we do instance does step forward. So instead of doing that, we actually want to go start add. Add action to queue. Crap, I got OBS running, that's killing my performance again. Okay, what I'm actually going to do now, that's add to front is going to default to false, so we don't have to explicitly say whether we want to add it to the front. That's just going to be like a kind of special case every now and then, because that's just going to trip me up every time. Okay, just comment out the old ones, and it's going to be wait. Side step up. I guess sidestep could just have an argument. That would be simpler. Same with step actually. We can just say the direction we want to step. Yes, instead of having like step forward, step backwards, step up, step down, side step down, we can just say like step with 1 or -1, and then side step with 1 or -1. That's a simpler way of doing it. Add action to queue. We do, so then we want to have like a value equals, that can just default to 0. And then we could pass in a value of 1. There. Side step with a value of 1. And then here we're going to go side step with a value of -1. No. Almost missed that there. So down is -1, up is 1. Then we want to go add an action of throw, and again that's going to pass in a value of 1 because it's throwing forwards. Maybe one day we want to throw backwards, I don't know. Let's not use that for now. So now whenever I do something, it should give us a debug log. Queue size 1, added weight by player. And it's obviously not actually performing the action now, so we can just keep adding stuff to the queue. Added side step by player. We should probably debug the value that we passed in as well. Where is it? Action queue. Added action, and then maybe just in parentheses. Game action dot value. Did I get that right? Oops. Add it to back, and we'll say add it to front, just so we know what's going on. And in fact, let's just make this bold. This is pretty handy. If you're doing debug logs, you can add rich text formatting. So then we just need to remember to close it there. And you can break apart the string as well. So like I start making it bold here, and then I have a value displayed in the log, and then I stop making it bold there. Let's just make sure we're passing in those values right. So queue size 1, added step, added to back, step 0 by player. So that's wrong. We're not passing in the step value. Button actions, add action to queue, player, GPI, add action to queue. Oh, so I didn't actually pass through the value there. Okay. So now whenever we add something to the queue, we know here it's we added it to the back, and it's a step action with a value of 1, so that means it's forwards, not backwards. And it's by the player character, GPI. So then we need to actually process what's in this queue. So we need to call this perform next action at some point. So that's probably going to be from my level manager. I'm just going to move that up there. That's where it should be really. So let's edit that. let's see. What's the best way to go about this? I kind of got not spaghetti code, but a lot of code. Let's see. I guess we should just get a reference to action queue. Let's just grab that on awake. Get component action queue. So the level manager is going to have a reference to that action queue right there. Then let's see. I guess I need to think a little bit about how this is gonna flow. So the player's gonna add an action to the queue. That's a queue. And then the player's gonna tell the level manager that it's done. Then the level manager is gonna step through each item in the queue. So it's gonna go, okay, give me your data. I'm gonna do it. I'm gonna do a data. Like that's such a most bizarre diagram. That makes no sense, but drawing it helps me understand it. Then when I've done it, I'm gonna say like, give me another one. That was really nice, and I'm gonna do that one. And then when there's none left, I'm gonna move on. And then when that's done, we're gonna go to the enemy turn. Let's make that green. So that's going to be like start. Let's add some text here. Start enemy turn. End player turn. That's what's happening there in my logic that's already existing. So the level manager really needs. Level manager really, like, the way I like to do it, maybe this isn't the best way to code things, but like the level manager kind of steps through every single thing in the game, what's happening. Like it knows everything. It can sort of pass information down to anything. It can have information passed up to it, and it's like I treat it like a hierarchy. So the level manager is like top of the chain, and nothing should really happen without the level manager knowing about it in some way. Like I never have the player like directly. Maybe I do sometimes, but having the player like directly tell an enemy to do something, for example, like the player instead tells the level manager, I hit an enemy, and then the level manager reports back down to the player. So like maybe in like business management, that's like a really bad way of doing it, but in you're gonna slow yourself down a lot, but well, in some cases it's a good thing, but like in this case it's definitely a good thing because like nothing slips through the net this way, right? Like the level manager always knows what's up. Hello, Adrian. Welcome. Do you like my diagram? Oh man, this is such a good song as well. This is called Sharp Teeth, also by the Octopus Project, and this is also flipping great. Anyway, let's get back to actually coding. So my level manager wants to step through the queue. Perform next action. So it wants to know a game action equals action queue dot get perform next action. So we're going to pull that into the game manager. I don't really want the action queue to be responsible for actually doing stuff. Maybe I should just make another class that does that. Yeah, that would be good actually. I like to split my classes up like as small as I can, so that they're easily like they're modular and they can be like ripped apart and read easily and all this kind of stuff. So let's go like action processor. Okay, so this class is going to be responsible for actually doing the actions. So the level manager is going to say like, okay, queue, I want an action. I want to know what's next to do. Tell me. And then the action queue is going to go like, all right, here's like the next thing that we should be doing. And then the level manager is going to go, all right, thank you, queue. Okay, now action processor, do it. And the action processor is going to like, yeah, say yes, and then it's going to do it. Okay. Well, Adrian says, I'd love to see more of what you're working on, but internet is spotty as I commute right now. I'm going to give you a really quick rundown of what we're looking at here. It's a little tactical sports game. Nothing's working right now because I'm ripping it all apart. But yeah, like if you check out the link that I've got in the corner, down there. Wait, where am I pointing? Wait, there, in that corner. If you go to that link, then like there's links to my Twitter and my Tumblr, and that's got like tons more stuff about this game that I'm working on and everything else I do. So, let's see. So we need a reference to the action processor as well as the action queue. So this kind of thing, like I'm kind of overhauling like some relatively low-level systems in the game, and it's one of those things which maybe like doesn't yield, like doesn't look like much until it all falls into place. In stark contrast to the animation I was doing in the last stream. Action processor dot process. We want it to have a public void called process, and it's going to take a game action. Let's call that like step once through queue, just so it's really clear what that does. So let's call that let's see. So this is I can see this kind of getting a bit interesting. Okay, let's just keep running, and we'll tackle issues as we find them. I don't care about that anymore. Phase text, that was just some like debug text I was doing. Yeah, let's just rip it out. I can just, I had some like debug text in the corner of the screen, which I don't need to display anymore. I can just put it in the console. That's what that was. And let's get rid of it completely. So, destroyed. All right, I'm just getting my head around the code that I wrote a few days ago. GPI destroyed. Change phase. No ball. Game over. Layer 1. And I should probably like group some of it as well. By region. End game. End region. Oops. So then I can just collapse all that down. Don't really care about that. And then let's start putting other stuff into some groups as well, so it's a bit tidier. Region, enemy, enemies, end region. Let's just put them all in the same place. Regions are handy, you can just like collapse large chunks of your code down like that. We'll have one for the player. So this is just basically like a bunch of methods which which objects can report to, like report in. You know, whenever the player does something, it can tell the level manager, I did this. I'm starting my turn, or I'm finishing my turn, or I died, or anything like that. And then we've got some stuff to do with the phase. Phase is what I'm kind of is what I'm calling, like, I guess like the stage of a game. You know, like so it starts out on the player phase, player turn phase, then it goes into the player acting phase. Then we go on to the enemy turn phase, and eventually we go on to like the kind of game over phase. So it's just a way of kind of grouping behaviors and knowing like what stage things are at any point. Okay, that's a little easier to pass. Just compile that, make sure we don't get any errors. Don't need that. Check Twitter. That's enough of that. Okay, where were we? Here, when the player ends their turn, we want the level manager to then start going through the queue. Wow, how is it 2 o'clock already? You know, when you're just like, oh, I'm hungry, why am I hungry? It's early, and then you look and it's not early. I'll probably give this like another half an hour at the most, I think, and then I should like eat something, I think. It'll probably be a good time to stop. So okay, let's get the phase, let's get the queue processing going. And we'll make a new region for that. Queue end region. Like, these regions don't actually like do anything in the code, you know, they're ignored when it's compiled, but they just help you to organize it and like hide stuff that you don't need to see. So, oh man, this is Where does that get called? Player. So in here, every time the player does something, we call started action, and that disables the input and tells the level manager to start, to change the phase to player acting. So then what we really want to do here is instead of actually doing the thing, okay, so let's see what happens. When we do step forward, we call started action. And then we actually move the player. So really, we don't want to do that. We want to say the players input their action. We want to go into a phase, which is then like kind of stepping through that action. And when all the actions are done in the queue, then we go into the enemy phase. Player started action. Yeah, like something about this terminology doesn't really make sense to me anymore. Like the way I've named my methods. Let's see. Let's rename that to like action has finished action input. Whoa. I'm getting pings. If the person who just messaged me is watching, I will reply after the stream is finished. Finished entering action. Let's go finish entering action. No. Entering is ambiguous. Finish inputting action. Okay. Then we want to go player started action. We'll rename that to be player started action. We want to call that as like player finished inputting action. Okay, enemy. I'm just renaming a lot of my stuff because it's going to help me to make sense of it. And change it. How are we doing for time? Okay. Step once through queue. That's where we want to do it. So when the players input their action, we want to change phase into player acting and step once through the queue. Eventually that's going to have to call like the next step in the queue, but that's okay. We don't have to do that yet. I don't know why I do this really, like, Let's just put them there, it's simpler. We don't need all these extra methods right now. Let's just keep it tidier. So this is one big switch, which when we go into a new phase, it's just going to run through. It's going to run through everything in that switch and just, you know, do the thing. Let's rename that to, just to be consistent, finish player turn should be player finished turn, like player finished inputting action. And that should be player finished acting. Let's not call it turn, because a turn can be like, turn is kind of ambiguous between whether it's like you inputting the command and you actually doing the thing. And eventually, like if I'm going to add another player character to the board, you know, like turn is, it's even more ambiguous. You know, is it all of the player, as in the human player, or is it the player character in the field? Like whose turn is it? Let's just make it super concise, super clear, and then it's going to be easier to work with. Oh. So for a start, I never get the action processor, which is a obvious mistake. And then I think when the player, is that it? So whenever we click a button, we just want to call that the player finished their thing. Action to queue. So what's missing? Object. Action processor. Oh, okay. All right. I never actually added the action processor script to the level manager, so that would be useful. There we go. Okay, perfect. So even if I press down, it still does forward because I've forced it to do forward. Okay. Okay, so now we could check. Now let's do like a switch for action.action. So whatever the action is, we can do the right thing. And if it's GPI action.forward step. Wait, is that right? Dot step. Yeah, okay. We can then do player instance. Oh, so, okay, this is perfect. Action.actor dot action dot value. Is this right? Step. So really, step should be way down in the base class, in the base GPI class. Okay, let's just want to hide all this stuff quickly. End region. We don't care about health right now. Region movement. So anytime a GPI wants to move, we're gonna give it this ability here. Try to move to position. Where is that? Is that a character? Okay, let's put a character. Okay, so maybe it doesn't make sense to have characters and GPIs as separate things. And maybe all the movement should just go into character class. I guess I need to have a really good think about like what types of objects can do what. That should just be a public void. Yeah, I think I want anything to be able to call this step once through queue thing. So like whenever anything's finished, it can just go like, okay, do the next thing. So character is going to go step once. Oh, not field manager, level manager. Okay. Field manager is taking control of like the actual tiles on the grid, whereas level manager is more like probably more of a game manager instead of level manager. In fact, let's make that private and let's go a public void actor finished action. And I may consolidate these at some point, but I think that just makes more sense for a public method name. Actor finished action. Wait, actually. What we can do here is say like, so when we try to step, so if oh man, I'm getting ahead of myself a little bit, but when we try to step, we can do a callback to the level manager and say that we've done the action, but if there's something in the way, we don't want to do that yet, because we then want to like kind of wait and see what happens. So, which is the whole point of this kind of queue system that we're working on, to allow it to sort of stagger outcomes and chain them together. Move to position. Let's not worry about that just yet. Let's just say when we try to move, it's done. So I think we want to just do get component character and then dot step. Is that right? Yeah, okay, perfect. And then Let's just try that. That should just work. Argument is out of range. It looked like it did it, but then maybe it was trying to go to the next step of the queue, which didn't exist. So let's see. If action queue. Let's do a way of finding out if there's anything left in the queue. So let's just do a boolean. Actions remaining. In queue, and if queue.count. So if the length of the queue is more than 0, then true, there are actions remaining, and otherwise so in the level manager we can go action queue. If there are actions remaining, I'll just put equals true just so it's explicit. Then we'll step once. Otherwise, oops, that's an if statement. Otherwise, we're done with this phase, I guess. So like in that case, we're doing that. We want to move on to the enemy turn. Change phase. And the phase we want to go to is level phase dot enemies acting. That needs to change eventually because we want to be able to flip between player and enemies. But for now, we just want to move on to the next phase, and when we can go through all the code that's still there and already works. Seemed to work. So then here we just need to add a case for each type of action. Sidestep, which doesn't exist, but wait and throw. So sidestep needs to move out of player. In fact, all of these need to move out of the player script because they're really character behaviors. Let's just separate all this out a minute. We don't want to do that anymore. Finish turn. Finish inputting action. We're not. That's all handled elsewhere now. Oh, okay. That's our wait. The wait already exists in the character class. So that's fine, we can just move it there. Okay, throw I'm going to leave back in the player class because it's something that's unique to the player right now. Only the player can throw the ball. The enemies don't have balls. The enemies don't have game balls. The enemies can't throw anything right now. Maybe they will later, like we might have enemies that can throw projectiles or something. But just to get the code working, I'm going to leave that out and come back to it later. So in that case, on my action processor, I need to do get component player and do throw instead. And I also need to pass in the direction. No, we don't. We don't care about the direction. Okay, so wait and throw don't have values because you can only wait in one way. There's only one way to wait, and there's only one way to throw right now. Eventually, you'll be able to throw to the side, I think, and maybe eventually we'll be able to wait for more than one turn or something. I don't know. So we could pass in a value for that as well, but we don't need to worry about it right now. So the character, does that need to be virtual void anymore? Because I don't think it gets inherited. Yeah, it doesn't. So we now need to copy in the stuff we did before. So try to move position, finished action, and finished action. So let's call this region actions, end region. And let's try that. So it did it, but it didn't wait before the next one. So what I might just quickly add is a little coroutine. And we'll probably do, this means we can just add a delay so that you can kind of see what's going on a little bit more. So we're going to have a coroutine that's like step through queue after delay. And we're going to pass in. No, we're not going to pass in a float, it's just going to be hard coded, I think, in this case. Default tick. Wait, what was the value we use? Debug tick. I don't know why that's called debug tick, it's not really a... It's basically like a time value, which I'm using throughout the whole game. Time tick, let's call it that. So this is kind of like a constant rate that everything steps through, and we can, we can multiply it or whatever if we need to, but everything's all based on that one time value. So what I want to do now is if there's something happening, I want to step once, start a coroutine, step through queue after delay. just putting in like times with everything basically, so that it's staggered a little more. So when the actor finishes something, if there's anything remaining, we're going to do a little delay and then we'll do the next action. Otherwise we're going to change the phase after a delay. Oh, that's a coroutine as well, so I need to put that in a coroutine. Okay, just some renaming errors there. Okay. That seems to be working. I just want to move the position of that debug log because it's always saying there's one item in the queue, because we're doing the log before we actually remove it. Oh, but it's going to get removed, so we're not going to have a reference to it. So let's just go. Let's do queue.count -1, do it there, and then we'll log the queue size like that, just so we get the right number getting put into the debug log. Okay, yeah, so go 1 and then 0. Okay, so that's cool. What we're doing, so just a quick recap, because I'm gonna end the stream I think in a minute and get something to eat. What I did there was, instead of just kind of doing an action when the player clicks an action, I've created a queue system whereby so like let's say we've got, oh man, Paint, come on Paint, don't let me down. So anytime like the player wants to do something, it kind of adds it into a queue. And then when an enemy wants to do something, it adds it into a queue. So we get like, we can then just pull out of that queue and then do it. But then like let's say the player wants to do something and then the enemy wants to do something, but the player does something which means a new action needs to happen. Like let's say it kind of attacks the enemy and that causes like a knockback. That knockback can get inserted into the middle of like somewhere else in the queue, and then what will happen is once we've done it, we can just resume where we left off. So that makes it like really easy to chain stuff together. We're not kind of having to say like, oh, if the player, like we wouldn't have to put loads of if statements and all that kind of junk, like oh, if you did this, you probably should do this thing afterwards. We go like, no, we just look at what's next in the queue and we just work our way through it. We can control the timing of things a lot better that way. We can end the turn at like on a reasonable delay. We can make sure that everything that needs to be shown and focused on by the camera happens, like gets focus. And generally, like it's a lot more robust. We just got this like list of stuff we work through, and we don't move on until we know that we've done everything. So that's kind of the basics of it. Like some of the initial framework. It's going to need some more work to get the enemies using that same system. but it's not. It's you know, like the groundwork's done, so it's kind of like pushing everything into that system from here on. So yeah, so like this is like a perfect example of like where I will use that next is that when I throw the ball, I need to queue up like the kind of end the player's turn. That wasn't happening because like I throw the ball, what happens when the ball hits something? Like nothing happens. So so yeah, that's what I'll be doing next. And yeah, thank you very much for joining. This is like really fun. I've been working on this all week, and I'm pretty excited. Yeah, like give me a follow on Twitch. I'm going to be streaming as much as I can. Give me a follow on Twitter. I always post like my dev blogs there. I also post these videos to YouTube, so you can subscribe on there, turn on notifications so you get like a little alert. What else do I do? Tumblr, Instagram, any of those, come and give me a follow. And yeah, thank you for joining. And I hope you check out the next stream. All right, have a good day, everybody, and I'll see you around. Bye. Where's the off button? Bye.